Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Rogue Monkey podcast. My name is Kevin Pickard, and welcome to our community of innovators, disruptors, and people who challenge themselves on their journeys to success. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you join our community both on the podcast and through our monthly mail out, the links to which are in the show notes. Thank you to everyone for the comments over the last few weeks. We've had some great interactions on social media following our first cluster of Season 4 episodes that have been released. So once you've listened to today's show, make sure you get on Twitter, Insta, Facebook or LinkedIn and let us know what you thought. This week we're exploring a rather timely subject as we are in conversation with the commercial director at Social Inc., an innovative social media marketing agency that are committed to putting the social back into social media. We explore James's journey through both the business and health sectors, his role now and some of the lessons learned along the way. So here we go with episode 29 of the Rogue Monkey podcast. Putting the social back into social media, exploring the journey of James O'Donnell from Social Inc. Good morning, James. How are we doing?
Good morning, Kevin. Very well, thank you. Good to see you.
And you. Welcome to the show. We're excited to explore things over the next. We haven't actually even decided how long we're going to talk for, but we'll see how it goes. But if you can just give our listeners a little bit of an introduction as to who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is James O'Donnell. I'm the commercial director at the social media marketing company Social Inc. We are all about putting the social back into social media through creating content and getting people to be more active online. However, Kevin and I know each other from a previous role.
A previous life.
Previous career, previous life, yes.
Now, I'm going to start jumping straight in with what you mentioned there about the social media stuff, because you messaged yesterday and said, do I play, I believe it was FIFA.
Yeah.
And I want to throw that in because that, for me, epitomizes like this concept you're talking around here, around a slightly different way of doing things and actually getting people in line with the digital age. Do you share with our listeners what you texted me yesterday?
Right, yeah. So this is a nascent idea. Like, this has not been tested. This is just an idea that we've had at Social Inc., where everyone is, I appreciate we're using Zoom at the moment to record this, but people are so zoomed out, and there's so many businesses and that struggle now to do networking or to meet new people or get out and make new connections. And we were thinking about how Zoom events have become very dull, and you've got nothing really in common with people that you're talking to apart from looking at the back of someone's bedroom or wherever they're joining the Zoom conversation and going, "Oh, I saw that picture in IKEA as well." There isn't that kind of camaraderie that you have when you go to any kind of networking event. And there's so many people out there that are trying to start new businesses, new ventures, like yourself, Kevin, with what you're doing with the Rogue Monkey podcast. And so what we're looking at how the gaming platforms could be used as a way of creating a more social environment for people to have conversations with each other. Now, you threw some scorn at the idea and say, "Oh, it just sounds like the excuse to play FIFA," which it's not, because I don't generally go and play FIFA very often, but it's quite a nice experience to sit down and play FIFA with an agenda. So I sat down with my founder yesterday, my business partner yesterday, and we played FIFA twice. I won both, and we had an agenda that we spoke about through those two games. And then when the game ended, that was the end of the call. We moved on and we had the stuff that we wanted to discuss. And one of the things we're thinking about is whether or not we can connect business people together through another platform, but then set them up to play each other via video games. And it could be a way of mentoring people. Imagine, people that want to get into digital marketing. We get a group of 10 of them, and they get to play me at FIFA 10 times. Something like that, and they can ask me any questions as they do it. And the thing is, it's a bit more fun, and it's less less forced than this kind of, this Zoom conversation that we might be able to have here.
I really
it's
like
just an idea. It's just an idea. It's nascent. It's growing. It might not go anywhere, but we give things a go. We'll try things out.
I love it. I got a book for Christmas from my other half called Rebel Ideas. I don't know if you've come across it yet, but if you haven't, It's Matthew Side's new book, and it's absolutely fantastic. And it talks about how 99% of people, and obviously my reply to you was probably a little bit jokey, but in a formal business setting, most business leaders in a traditional organization would go, that's ridiculous, leave it. And actually it's that 1% that are actually going to move things on and probably survive in the coming months better than most. So no, I love it. I really like that. And let's step away from even digital stuff. Just looking on the screen now, why the sunglasses? Something different?
These bad boys.
Yeah.
So if you look at me now, I'm just kind of a middle-aged bald man, and these make me look a little bit different, a little bit more recognizable. So they do make me stand out a little bit. There's a few different reasons though. So I started wearing these. I was trying to create community content. This is in a previous career. I was working as the sales director for LDN Apprenticeships, which is an apprenticeship training company based in London. They do really great things, creating, help kickstarting digital careers for young people in the capital. And my job was to go out and win business by talking to businesses about apprenticeships and the benefit of investing in young people for themselves, for the young person, and also for the wider good. And what I did is every time I met with a business, or every time I went and did an account management meeting with the apprentice and their manager, is I would do a selfie. And the idea of that was that then I'd post that on LinkedIn, I'd tag the business, I'd tag us, I'd tag the manager, and that would give an exponentially large outreach to shining a positive light on that business, the fact that they were investing in a young person. And one day it was sunny, and so I put my sunglasses on, and they're a bit outrageous wearing red sunglasses, but I've always been someone that wears something a little bit different. And that particular photograph that I put up got so many more likes and comments than anything else that I put out before, that the next meeting I went to, they had said, "So you're gonna wear the red sunglasses again?" I was like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, if you want, we'll do a selfie with that." And then it just became a thing that every time I went to a business, they would be like, "Where's the red sunglasses?" I put them on the table, and it's a complete MacGuffin. It's a nothing really, but it does make you slightly more memorable. And that's, all you're looking for is that extra 1% to make yourself more memorable than the last person that they met that might have been talking to them about something. And now it's just become a thing. The other thing as well is in apprenticeships, there's a lot of bald middle-aged men, and they all look like this. And if you put this on, you'll stand out just a little bit more. That doesn't mean that everyone has to go out and wear red sunglasses though.
I can see the next 3 calls that I'm going to have. There's going to be 24 people on the screen all with sunglasses on.
That would be strange. That would look like a coming together of madness. They all wear sunglasses when they're performing.
Yeah, well, maybe
want to be rock star.
We'll sidestep that one a little bit.
Okay.
So we talked about being different and that kind of point of difference. You've obviously had a range and a different selection of roles that have led you to the point you've got to now. So can you just kind of take us on a kind of a whistle stop tour, if you like, because obviously we first met when you were in the health and fitness industry, but obviously you were in another role before that. So if you can just give us a bit of an insight as to how you've got to this point where you are now.
Yeah. So I've always been someone that people recognized as being relatively good at talking. And that's kind of where my careers have led me. So whistle stop, this is going to be a challenge because there've been quite a few careers. So I actually started immediately after school. I went out to Australia on a gap year, and I started selling knives, shiny ones, door to door. I think Homer Simpson worked for the same company. as me at some point, and quickly moved on from that and started doing door-to-door selling for mobile phones. And that was great in Australia, 18-year-old, just traveling around, getting a tan. God, I need it now. And selling. And then I did that for a couple of years and then came back to the UK, got a degree in politics, and moved into recruitment. And recruitment, I was specifically selling in tech recruitment, business intelligence and data warehousing. And I worked in that for about 10 years, moved back out to Sydney, came back to the UK. And I was, basically just doing lots and lots of sales and lots of networking, using Twitter and LinkedIn for the first time, probably at that time. And I had a bit of a midlife crisis when I was about 30, and I was coaching judo at the University of New South Wales, and I made the decision that I wanted a career change, because the big thing that impacts all of the careers that I've done is that I like helping people, and I want to have my impact the most amount of people that I possibly could in my role. So when I was a recruiter, I was probably helped about 20 people a year into jobs, which doesn't sound like much, but mine were relatively high end roles that I was putting people into. Then when I retrained after my midlife crisis as a personal trainer, I was training about 40 people a year, and that's when you and I met at David Lloyd. And I did that for a couple of years at David Lloyd, then a couple of years ran my own business. And then my now wife said I should go and get a proper job. And that's when I started at LDN Apprenticeships as their eventual sales director, where I was helping probably about 120 to 150 young people start careers in London. And then Noah came along and we made the decision to change up careers a little bit. We moved out to the Lake District and then later back into London. And I'm working relatively part-time, 3 days a week, sometimes 4 days a week. Now, other day doing daddy daycare, and I'm basically helping people create digital marketing and content in order to impact as many people as possible as they can in their lives. I think that's everything I've done.
That was a whistle-stop tour, and it kind of
I went as fast as I possibly could there.
I don't feel like we skipped over details. Like, I think, you've got that kind of in a nutshell pretty damn good. So obviously it takes you up to where you are now, and you've mentioned this kind of balance. Before we move into the social link stuff, I'd be curious, having been on the work journey, been around the world, and obviously you see different cultures, different places, different way people and areas operate. Coming back, settling down, and then being a parent, has that changed how you view work, and especially going into this digital space, working remotely? How has that kind of impacted on it?
Yeah, like I don't know if Noah is unique in this, but kids take up an unbelievable amount of time in the nicest possible way. Like, he is incredible, but I don't know how anybody gets anything done as a new parent in the first year. Just no sleep, and I get it easy. My wife does most of the work, to be honest. I just do little bits here and there, really, but it soaks up so much of your concentration time and so much of your energy that when you then turn around and look at work, you need to. And something that I've been working on in lockdown is you need to think about what's the biggest leveraged task that I can do that's going to have an impact. You can't just do everything anymore because you don't have enough time. You don't have enough energy in your batteries to kind of keep going like you used to when I was younger, maybe. So it has made me recognize maybe a couple of things. It's important. Family is important. Everyone knows that already, but being a parent is doubly so. The other thing is that as a working in business, you can't just run around like a headless chicken. You need to think about specific things that you need to either get better at or perform to have the biggest impact. And that doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter what role you're in. It doesn't matter if you're in sales, if you're a developer, you're a project manager, if you run your own business, if you're doing a podcast. There's going to be loads of things that you could do, but there's going to be a couple of things which, if you really concentrate on, is going to have a much bigger impact on the results that you receive. And thinking about that as because of lockdown, because of the amount of time spent with Noah, that's something I've really had to think about.
So that kind of brings us nicely up to where we are now. Let's talk a little bit about the company. And we talk about, diversity and trying new ideas and things like that. You've got your podcast, you've got your YouTube channel, you've got the website, you've got all your different social media channels. You're very active on LinkedIn. People can't not necessarily put all their eggs in one basket, but you're certainly somebody who's kind of going, right, we're going to try this, and we're going to try this, and we're going to try this, but in a strategic way. Like, it's not almost a scattergun approach. It is very thoughtful. All the different things, they're appropriate for each channel you put out. And I think people don't necessarily understand that you can't just write a tweet, copy and paste, put it on Instagram, copy and paste, put it on LinkedIn, because you're dealing with a different audience, potentially in different parts of the world, looking at you for different reasons and those sorts of things. So where does that all kind of fit into where you are now in this company? Because you're the expert, you're the pro.
Which is strange, because this is the first job I've ever actually done where I've been, like the social media person. I'm a salesperson, not first and foremost. I just use digital channels to get my messaging across to win business. The thing with platforms is that they are all ever so slightly different. They've all got slightly different audiences, and that's the important thing to think about. Is it's the platform that has the audience, not you. So all you're doing is you're creating content on that platform that they will share in a way that they deem that their parts of their audience will like looking at. So the kind of content, as you said, that you put out on Insta, that you put out on Twitter or LinkedIn, has to be different. There's going to be different ways that those algorithms, that depends on what you're trying to achieve. There's different ways that those algorithms will show that content to people that you are connected with, or other people within their audience. What's really important is, doesn't matter if you're a person starting out or if you're a business that's starting out, is the first thing that you need to do is you need to define who you are trying to talk to. There's no point trying to please everybody in content that you're sharing. Although you might see some people being very generic with their content and being very successful with it, that's because they've started off with a niche and they've slowly built up. And thinking about the who, and then talking to that person, every time that you create content is important across all the channels. And one of the reasons we're across all the channels is because we need to be adept at the channels that we use with our clients. So we're not one of those businesses that might go to a company and say, hey, you really need to get on TikTok because everyone's on TikTok. And then they're turning around and saying, well, we're an accountancy company. Why we need to go on TikTok? None of our clients are on TikTok. And the point is that we would only work with channels, with a company, with a business where their ideal clients are. There's no point just being everywhere for the sake of it. So there is strategy behind the platforms that we use and why we would use particular ones for different clients.
I want to rewind a little bit. You mentioned, you might see 40, 50 clients in a year when you were PTing. Sport, activity, health, whatever you want to call it. You're in the gym, you can get a standardized plan off Google or anything else. But the value added and the differentiation was how you delivered that for the needs of each of those clients that you worked with. So do you think, looking back now reflectively, working in the sports world has actually equipped you with some of the tools to understand that adapting something that can be standardized, but actually to really get the best out of that client, that person, that athlete, whoever it is you're working with, actually does need tailoring down?
There's an element in sport. There's a difference between sport and personal training. So I really enjoyed the sport aspect of it when I was coaching, but I was mainly coaching young people, and I was basically being big jazz hands energy to get people excited about trying new things and stepping out of their comfort zone. When I was personal training, it was, so why do you need a personal trainer? Because you can't motivate yourself to do it yourself. Basically, as you say, you can find all the information you need on Google. So you have a personal trainer to have someone there telling you what to do, so you don't have to learn or think about what you're doing. But also there's the accountability. You know that that person is going to be there at that particular time that you're going to have to do it. So how does that work in business? Is that having accountability, is really important. There are so many people that have big plans, and whenever we speak to people that are looking to start new businesses, is that all businesses look really good in Excel. Spreadsheets make businesses look very easy, but it's about being consistent and about turning up and being accountable. If not to yourself, then having a coach or an accountability partner that you're working with that makes sure that you turn up every single day. There's no magic pill. There are ways of finding out what you need to be doing at every single step, but actually having someone in your corner that's cheering for you, that's keeping you accountable, is really really important. And that could be it as a founder relationship, like two founders of a business, firing off each other, or working with a coach or something similar.
I think we might see more of an expanding of kind of business mentors and stuff in the future. Obviously, a lot more people are going into the world of being an entrepreneur and trying to set up businesses and things like that. And listened to a really interesting interview before Christmas with Michelle Moan, who was Ultimo, and she talked about how she had a coach when she hit her most difficult period, if you like, of her business. She actually got a coach, and the coach was like, you need to focus 100% on you, developing you, becoming the best you can be, and then everything else will follow. And one of the examples that one of her friends in her world gave her was something to the effect of, you need to treat your business like your body. You wouldn't neglect it. You would. And I thought it's a really interesting way. And obviously, relatively sport aware in my job, but actually I've never really thought about it in that kind of analogy before, but actually that makes complete sense.
That works really well, because if you think about exercises, is what are the most effective exercises? You've got four basic ones. You've got to push, pull, squat, and lunge. And if you do those, you're basically going to be all right. You won't get poor posture. Everything will be worked. All your large muscle groups will be worked out all right. But when people go to the gym, they go, "Oh, look at that new TRX or that new piece of machinery over there. Can we go play with that?" And it's the same in business, is that there's loads of new technology and new techniques and new ideas that get thrown about all the time. But it's the consistency, it's the basics, it's finding out who your ideal customer is, getting your messaging in front of them, taking them on a journey and solving their pains or their problems. That's what business is about, or selling business is about. People get distracted, but there are some basic things that you need to do to make things happen. And people spend a lot of time on the distractions rather than thinking about what is the one thing that I can do today that is going to take my business to the next level.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I do a little bit of support with university students, especially around their final year projects. And one of the things trying to explain to them, especially if you're perhaps a bit more disenchanted with the education system and you've just gone through the motions, if you like, and obviously working in the world of sport, you can tell quite early on people that are genuinely hugely passionate about sport and they love it. And I say to them, go and find a gap, go and find a problem, go and find a pain point and solve that for somebody, or at least give them some insight into that pain point, because actually that's like absolutely fundamental. What gets us motivated? As a young athlete, how do I get from here to top of the world? Well, you have to do this, and this. But ultimately, I've got a clear target in mind of where I want to head. And like you say, it's very easy, almost a magpie effect of all shiny keys over here, all shiny things over here. Whereas actually the raw principle of what you mentioned there in business and in the sports world is applicable to everybody. So I find that really curious.
I think going and finding the gap is easier than you might think. And if you go and talk to someone that's a step ahead of you, if that's what you're trying to do, and say, where do you spend most of your time? What do you wish was easier? that is harder? What one thing, if you just concentrated on that one thing, would actually have a bigger impact in your sport? And some of the answers that you might get might be surprising, and that then leads you to actually doubling down on that one thing rather than just trying to be all things. Because the generalists, maybe I'm speaking out of turn because there are some sports that are slightly more generalist than others, but generalists generally don't excel. Whereas if you find one thing that you can become particularly good at, that can really, help you grow exponentially.
With the business hat on, and I'm jumping back to January 2020, which seems like a lifetime ago now, and I interviewed a guy called Wayne. I think it was episode two or three of the show, episode 2, and he talked about McDonald's back in the 70s and 80s, I think it was, and they did some customer research around kids wanting chicken and saying that they don't want bones. And the long story, it created chicken nuggets. Sure. And they said parents weren't buying the stuff, and they said, actually, we just want a coffee. And even now, if you talk to people who are relatively into their coffee, but not, they'll get something from wherever's available. They say McDonald's coffee is pretty good. Now, I'm not a coffee drinker, but actually that comes from talking to your customers or people who are ahead of you in business or whatever it is, and listening to what they are saying, instead of just saying, you're wrong, I know better, or we've always done it this way and we're not going to change. Well, those are businesses like the Blockbusters of the world that just fizzle out and disappear.
Yeah, well, Blockbusters is a particularly interesting situation because they literally just hammered down on product rather than thinking about their why or their just cause for creating, for getting movies in front of their customers. They didn't think about that. All they thought about was the product, which was the VHS, I suppose, or DVDs.
It was VHS.
VHS, yeah, VHS. Rather than Netflix, who were in the VHS and DVD game, but their idea was, we just want to get this in front of our customers. What's the easiest way for that to happen? And that's where people have not listened to their clients, and they've got caught up in the product side of things.
Do you think that's something that maybe our current generation is probably more open-minded to than ever? Because if you take the Blockbuster example, the guys behind Netflix actually presented to the Blockbuster board 10 years before Blockbuster even went bankrupt and said, look, we've got this idea and we think this is the future. No, we don't get out. We know what we're doing. And you're kind of like, whereas now, I don't know about you, but my ears prick up when I hear that sort of thing of, oh, that's an interesting idea. Let's do a little bit of digging, or let's have a call, or let's have a Zoom, dare I say it. But actually, it's so much easier now for those ideas to gain a little bit more traction than perhaps in the old days, where previously they were just batted aside and they really had to. Graft is the wrong word because people still graft really hard now. But I think there's many more avenues for those very innovative and very forward-thinking ideas to come to market.
Yeah, I think the term is entrepreneurship, and you can be an intrapreneur within a business as well. And businesses are starting to learn the lesson that you can't just be an incumbent and wait, and just ride out your business. You need to be able to protect yourself as a business by constantly innovating within your space, which is why so many big businesses now have incubators where they fund startups to have ideas, basically, because they know that their competition is out there and can turn things around so fast compared with the big hulk that might be some big business out there. So I hope there are more ideas that are going to come through this lockdown. There's going to be so many people at home that have been tinkering online, creating new tools. There's a big movement around no-code tools where you don't have to be a coder to create things, and you just kind of connect bits and bobs together to make businesses. So, I hope there's more innovation there. But innovation comes from talking to people, receiving feedback, constantly changing and pivoting around what you're trying to deliver. And that doesn't matter if you're trying to create a product or if you're starting a career. That's the same kind of process that you might need to go through.
In that book I mentioned earlier, Rebel Ideas, they use the term echo chamber. And that's kind of, you talked about incumbent companies that refuse to move forwards, where they surround themselves with a lot of people who say yes, agree that everyone's doing the right thing, nothing needs to change. Therefore, that becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy of everything's fine, because everyone I've surrounded myself and brought into my business and the way I'm structured tells me everything's going to be okay. And that almost seems the opposite to some of the discussions we have, where actually you seem massively comfortable with change, which has allowed you. And I guess that's kind of why I originally approached you to come on the show, because I'm interested as to how that, just from a personal point of view, is the absolute hallmark of what you've done over the last, 5 to 10 years. You're comfortable with change.
Yeah, change is an interesting thing. Like, my best man, when I got married, my best man stood up and said that I've always been someone that likes stepping out of their comfort zone, and I haven't been afraid of it. But I don't think that's an intrinsic characteristic. I think it's just recognizing that life is short. We're only going to live once, in my opinion, humble opinion, and you got to try things out, because otherwise you're going to miss out and you're going to have regrets. So I'm very comfortable being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. I remember what started that. I remember seeing you heard of Michael Palin? Yeah, Monty Python. So he did 80 Days Around the World, the documentary, and he was in, I'm going to offend some people, I want to say Hong Kong, and he was at a restaurant, and I remember very distinctly this scene where he's looking at camera, he looks terrified, and he says, I'm going to eat something now that I've never eaten before in my life. And then this guy turns up with 2 snakes, right? One in each hand, and he says, which one do you want? And he points at one, and he literally kills the snake, rips the skin off it. Like it's absolutely, probably wouldn't go out on television now, but and then it comes back and he eats the snake and he says it tastes like chicken. But I remember as a young boy seeing that and thinking, right, I'm going to try and eat everything. I'm never going to say no. I've always got to try things out. And the same as, that same attitude works with careers and jobs and technology and opportunities that are out there. When I looked at, my big career change probably was going from being a recruiter to going into personal training. And the idea of that was, the big thing with that, was that I might have been to a gym a couple of times, but I really didn't know much about gyms, but I knew I was into fitness from time at judo. And so when I got the job at David Lloyd, my whole pitch to them was, I know nothing about, I've got my personal training qualification, but I don't really know what I'm doing in a gym. But I love learning, and I will learn and learn and learn, and I've got energy around learning, and I love soaking up ideas, trying things out, experimenting with them, and learning as fast as I can. And that resonated well with them. And then I started, and I think I built the biggest book of personal training clients in the shortest amount of time that they'd ever seen. Because I was human, and I was like, I'm just learning, but I kind of know what I'm talking about. And those ideas about rapid skill acquisition within the gym actually was really useful when I went into apprenticeships, because I was able to talk to apprentices. I was not the coach. I was just the sales guy. I was the person that connected the apprentices with employers and spoke to employers about the best way of managing their staff. And we spoke to them a lot about the key characteristics that you need to learn skills quickly. And it doesn't matter what they are. You need to have an energy about yourself to go and start learning. You need to be enthusiastic about the opportunities that are in front of you, that you can learn. Like, fantastic, growth mindset. Everybody can get better at every skill. You can't necessarily become world class at it, but for example, I can't juggle currently. I'd love to learn to juggle. I can learn to juggle. Really, really simple belief there. And you need to be willing to put in the work to learn something. So learning means reading about it, means talking to people, means watching YouTube videos, means soaking up that information. Then you need to be have the attitude to try things out. So you need to make stuff happen. You need to be willing to fail. I know if I try to juggle now, I will drop balls. Yeah. And knowing that that's going to happen actually helps the learning journey. From a coaching perspective, you've got conscious incompetence, conscious competence. You're going to have to help me here, mate.
If you're going through on the basic one, I would call it the beginner, the intermediate, and the advanced, where you get to a point where it becomes autonomous and you don't think about it. But to get to that point, not just you have to go through it, it's beneficial to expect that you're going to get to it. And
yeah,
do you think
so to recognize it's going to happen? You will realize that you're going to continue to fail at this thing. And there's an amount of time that you have, and then you become competent in it, and then it becomes fun.
The thing is, I think though, that almost runs in opposition to modern day society, where you can get everything now. You can get everything yesterday.
So that was a really big problem that we had with apprentices, is that people were listened to this stupid idea where people were told to follow their passion. And the problem with passion is passion only happens when you struggle through something, when you get good at something, and then you become passionate about it. The idea is that you try things out, that you give things a go, you learn about them, you get feedback, and you get better and better and better. And that's how you build passion. And that's how you learn. And the problem with instant gratification that you get, that I can click a button and something can arrive tomorrow, means that you don't have that, you haven't developed that expectation, the kind of gap in your expectation levels to realize that good thing comes to those who wait.
So I'm jumping back because there was a Simon Sinek video I watched a few years ago now, and it talked a lot about the instant gratification generation and the struggles they had and felt they weren't making a difference quick enough. But actually, in the business and the career worlds, if that's their start of their journey, but they've spent 18 years being told everything now, we remove struggle, we remove challenge, we shelter people, we wrap them up, however you want to term it. But actually, you then get more people get to the point where they try something they're interested in, try and develop skills at it and then a passion for it, but actually they get knocked off course too quickly because it's not done in 5 minutes flat. And I say to, when I'm working with young athletes or students or whoever it is, what you see in terms of success is the finished product and the tip of an iceberg, and you need to understand that at the start, because if you don't, ultimately it's like trying to climb Everest in 10 minutes. It's not going to happen. Years of preparation, money, time, hard work, and a huge risk. But yes, it is possible to do, but understand that there's a huge range of things you're going to have to overcome to get to it. And too many people aren't comfortable with that.
There's the young person that's trying to make that journey, but there's also then the management of that young person. So what I mean by that is that there's this, you might have encountered this in coaching, there's this feedback
loop
method called, hey, you're doing this really well, but you need to improve at this. But remember, you're still doing this really well here.
There's a technical term for that. It's called a shit sandwich.
I was trying to be a little bit more PG, but yes. And the problem with that is that they only hear, is that the human brain can only hear a certain amount of information at once. And you're essentially hearing two good things and you're thinking, oh, I'm doing all right. And you forget about the little negative thing because you can think, oh, these two other things that you're doing well at. And one of the big things that we worked at with managers of young people was you need to be very direct with your feedback, because otherwise young people literally won't understand what they need to improve on. But then you need to coach the young person or the student that you're working with about how to receive feedback and why they're receiving it. Because young people, if they haven't received negative feedback before going to work, will take it as a personal affront and will fight against it. If you condition the young person to understand that the person is going to give you very direct feedback about what you need to improve on, and recognize that that is part of the learning journey, then both manager and apprentice, or coach and uh, uh, student, will actually grow better together. And it's a team based approach to growing that young person's skill and that young person's passion towards anything. And that's in any career. It doesn't matter if it's sales, as I said, or coding, or recruitment. Both people need to understand that paradigm, that kind of coaching paradigm, and how feedback can help the individual grow.
We talk about like how kind of wide reaching some of these messages are that you've kind of shared with us today. Let's look at the reality of where everyone is now. You're in some very difficult situations, whether you're a coach, whether you're a young sports person, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a student, whether you're an established business that's just trying to navigate their way through this. Looking back on what you've learned now, and I know I've listed an entire page of notes now. So how would you boil that down to kind of 2 or 3 things that you would say to people if you had almost not the elevator pitch of them, but you could just say to them, just this, and this will help you, but stay true to it?
So being human sounds like very simple advice to give, but it's very difficult because people project a brand, and they feel like they need to project a brand. Whereas being authentic, I think, in all of your interactions is very important. Why that's important for a young person or anyone starting business, or you now in lockdown, is putting your hand up and saying, I don't know how to do this. I want to get better at this. Does anybody know how to do this? It sounds like really simple things to say, but if you say that, they're so powerful, because people will want to help you. People will show you the way. People have tried things out before, and they'll be able to say, this is best practice. This is what you want to do. And I know you've done this with the podcast. You said, I don't know how to do this. Someone has helped you. You've given it a go. Brilliant. You've learned. And all that is being honest. You don't need to know everything. So I think putting your hand up and saying, I don't know this, it's a really simple but powerful thing to admit to people, particularly job interviews. I've interviewed hundreds of people. I would wish people would say, I don't know how to do that, but I want to learn.
Yeah.
Really, so powerful.
Authenticity is huge. And I think you find that whether you're interview or the interviewee, but actually a lot of authenticity can be usually picked up quite quickly once you ask some of those questions where you know they're in an uncomfortable space. But actually, I find it quite humbling when somebody will actually turn around and do exactly what you said there. I don't know, or I'm not sure, or I'd like to go and read further on that, but I'm willing to learn. And it's a willingness to put themselves in that space, even if they're not sure what that space looks like. That's that moment where actually I say to people now, like, well, have you read that book? Have you tried learning about that thing? Have you watched a YouTube video? I mean, half of the podcast stuff I set up, I learned off YouTube, and I message people now when I see, I'm looking at setting up a podcast, and I drop them a direct message on Twitter and say, I made it up as I went along, but I'm more than happy to have a call with you to just share everything I've picked up along the way, because that it just pays it forward. And I think too often people don't think that kind of everything has to be polished. Instagram, we're back to our social media again, but actually everything has to be a polished, finished article. And if I'm not perfect, that's not good enough.
Raw is much better than, iteratively raw content of whatever you're doing is much better than sitting there waiting to become polished. Nobody's first draft of anything looks good. You go to any grandmaster painter, they would have done so many notes and sketches and things before the finished article. And so that's the kind of attitude that you want to now, is that you can learn in public, and people will love the journey that you go on. If you look at my YouTube, my Twitter, my LinkedIn posts from years ago, they're shambolic compared to where they are now. and it's the growth that's the important thing to show through your through your authenticity. So asking, I think, is a big thing. The next thing, you said three things. The next thing I wanted to talk about, which we've kind of segued into, but is taking action. So putting your hands up saying, I don't know how to do something, you'll then be told stuff. You then need to action it straight, not straight away is the best thing to do, because you will learn what you can do and there's another thing that actually I don't know how to do over here, but you need to take action. And particularly if you want to generate a mentorship type relationship with the person that you've said, I don't know how to do it, then the first thing that they want to see, as you said, is that someone has taken action towards. And if you can demonstrate that really fast, look, you said that I needed to do this, this, and this. So I've gone away and done this, this, and this. This is what I've done, but I'm still struggling over here. Or this is what I've seen to do. This seems to have worked well, but this hasn't. This person is so much more interested in helping you going forward because they know you take action. The last thing you want to do is give advice to someone who's just then going to sit on their hands or wait for a perfect opportunity to come around. You want to work with people that try things and give things a go.
So authenticity and saying, I don't know if you don't know. Action and drum roll.
You put me right on the spot. But and then repeating that process. Like it really is as simple as that. If you constantly ask into, and then demonstrate, ask and then demonstrate, and be open to that learning process, you can do anything. Like, you really can. It frustrates me when people go that don't have a growth mindset and they go, I can't do that. I want to work with people, and I coach people now who want to get better, and you can, and this fundamental growth mindset. You can get better at anything, but you just need to try things out and give things a go. I think it's so fundamental to the modern career, and I suppose that's what we've been talking about, is what is the modern career. The skills that you might have, the skills that you had 20 years ago are completely redundant. You need to be in a constant process of learning to keep up with technology, but also keep up with ideas that are going on in the world. So if you're starting a career or starting a business, you don't learn everything and then do the work. The work is learning. You're constantly learning, you're constantly evolving through everything that you do. And I think that's the important thing, is that it can't stop. And as soon as someone says, "Oh, I'm too old to learn this," or anything like that, it's that is the end of that person's career. That is where they will plateau. Whereas the people that do the best are people that are constantly iterating, constantly learning throughout their journey.
That's a really nice way to pull it all together. And I know you've mentioned a few of the different feeds that you're on already, and we will make sure that we share all of those in the post-show notes for everybody, because there's so many different topics we've discussed there. And I know you do little episodes on little topics here and there. So there's so many. I mean, how many episodes have you got out now?
Episodes of
podcast?
We've done over 100 podcasts of the All About Digital Marketing show. That's mainly Chris, my business partner, who's the expert in, he's been working in digital marketing for 12 years or so now. But we've got over 100 episodes of that. We've probably up to 40 or so episodes of the Social Link show. And we share lots on the social media channels through Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook.
So we're going to take your second point there of action. And there's a call out to everyone there. If you want to know more on any of these things we've talked about, the resources are out there. They're freely accessible, and you are very active on social media. So drop a comment, drop a message, and you will get back to them.
Yeah. And, I'm more than happy to jump on and do a Zoom coffee with people for 15 minutes, or a Zoom FIFA Zoom, just to jump on and talk about actions that people could take to learn. It doesn't matter what your career is. If you can learn how to learn quickly, you're going to be doing all right in the economy.
James, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. And I hope everyone out there has picked up something a bit different, probably, to some of the topics we've discussed before. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been great talking to you, and maybe we can do something again.
Yeah, maybe on Zoom.
Yes, definitely.
Cheers.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks again there, James, for your time and some great insights shared. It's interesting that with such a rapidly diversifying digital space, we still cluster all social media together as one entity, when actually the different channels and how we communicate through them are so different. I love this idea of getting staff to interact and have meetings in different ways, and being comfortable in being uncomfortable when trying something new, a theme that seems to be a regular message on the show. We've put links to both James and Social Inc. in the show notes and all of their various platforms. James himself also co-hosts a successful podcast with Social Inc.'s founder Chris Bruno. Having watched a lot of their episodes, I can certainly recommend it, so make sure you head over to their YouTube and check out some of the great gems that they share to help people on their digital journey. That's it for this week. Next week we are hearing from a very special young man who has been on a physical and psychological journey across the last 18 months that left him close to giving up on life itself. It's one of the most incredible stories of both resilience and inspiration we've ever heard, and we cannot wait to share it with you. The show will go out on Sunday next week, tying in with Rare Disease Day. So make sure you're ready as we go live with our 30th show. Have a great week, everyone, and thanks for joining us on the Rogue Monkey Podcast.